All right, guys, we're talking about Arkansas and Duke. Way too early preview for that game coming up Thanksgiving. And as you know now, we're powered by our friends at FanDuel, our title sponsor here at Southeastern 16. And we wanted to just give you a little teaser before you get into this clip where Max and I were talking about Arkansas and Duke, our way too early thoughts and predictions potentially on that game. Duke, Max, plus 1,100 right now to win the national championship. They have the third best odds, according to FanDuel, to be crowned national champions in 2026. Arkansas, plus 3,000. So a little bit of a gap here between these two, but
Yep.
there will be no gap when it comes to the excitement for the Duke fans, for the Arkansas fans come Thanksgiving, because this is going to be one of the most highly anticipated showdowns in non-conference play, probably in the entire sport this year. Jon Calipari wondered, Max, could it be the most watched game in the past decade in college basketball? We're going to find out. So let's jump into our recent discussion on our way too early thoughts for Arkansas and Duke. Let's talk about Arkansas and Duke
Oh boy.
because they are the
Oh
game of the
boy.
week here in our non-conference series. Doing way too early look at the non-conference games. And by the way, some people have said, "Why are you talking about a game this far away, folks?" There were hundreds of people that still watched our Florida Arizona thing the other day. There have been like 4,000 to 5,000 people that have been in on the Kentucky Louisville way too early preview. It's basketball season here.
It's
I know it's
fun.
not even. It's come on, this is exciting. So Arkansas and Duke, these two will clash, and what Jon Calipari said, maybe the most watched game in the past decade potentially. However long that time frame was when we talked about that. Max, you're going to be eating your turkey and watching the Hogs and the Blue Devils.
It is a rock lock that I will be fully missing out on any family activity during the duration of this basketball game.
Rock lock. Man.
And you're right. Calipari said it's going to be one of the most watched college basketball games in the last decade, because if you go back to last Thanksgiving, Illinois against Arkansas averaged over 5 mil viewers. It was the most watched college basketball game on any network the regular season last year. Sign me up for Arkansas Duke a little bit more than Arkansas Illinois. I think this thing even beats that.
The number one matchup you have your eye on in this game, personnel wise.
The 4. Boozer, Brazil, duking it out. Versatility on versatility. The youngster against the vet. What version of Brazil do we get? Reports are that he's putting on some muscle, Blake. He's been in the gym. He's been lifting. You got Boozer. Is he the next Cooper Flag? Is he the next freshman of the year? MVP candidate? Boozer can stretch the floor, do a little bit of everything, just like Brazil can. Oh, sign me up for that matchup, Blake.
Yeah, just for background reference, obviously Duke is the number one recruiting class in the country with this prop they're going to bring in. As you can tell, it's just a very talented team. But like you said, we talked about Brazil this offseason quite a bit because one of the things is just sort of, we know what the talk was with this guy, several years ago, came from Missouri to Arkansas, got injured in that Maui Invitational, missed the rest of the year. And then, it's kind of just getting back on track and having the kind of finish to your career that you want. And, man, the talent is certainly there. We saw some of the things last year that he was able to do. But, yeah, I think on this team right here, like we mentioned, you're bringing in some new guys. You still got a good crop of underclassmen. So, leaning on that experience of someone like Brazil is going to be important. And you're going up against, like you said, just an absolute, potential superstar in Cam Boozer. So I think, that's probably just a huge matchup to determine kind of exactly how this game plays out.
And just to set the stage here, this line is going to change greatly from this preseason prediction, as it's about 3.5, 4 weeks into the season. So this is going to change. But as of right now, preseason expectations, Bart Torvik has Duke about a 2-basket favorite. So Duke just slightly projected to be a little bit better than Arkansas. You guys can't see the depth on the graphic. Duke is going to be a little bit of a deeper team than Arkansas, but not quite as deep as this Duke team that we just watched last year. For Arkansas, you're going to get the 5-star freshman Malik Thomas off the bench in the backcourt with Acuff and Wagner. A little bit of Billy Richmond there on the wing. You've got Nick Pringle in behind Ewan as well. In the international Artail, maybe the freshman Semedo, maybe the freshman Sealy could sneak in there, but it'll kind of be that tight 8-ish man rotation for Arkansas. Duke a little bit deeper. The point guard spot up in the air right now. I've got Caleb Foster listed there just kind of for seniority, but you got the Boozer's brother, Caden Boozer, also there at 6'4", who can handle the rock. Isaiah Evans is going to be massive for this team, Blake. Massive because the three-point volume that was there last year with Knipple, even with Flag out at the 4, they had tons and tons of shooting. Dame Sarr, the international, capable if you lead him wide open, but in his international stats, he's never averaged more than like 0.5 or 0.8 threes a game. So if you leave him wide open, he can shoot it, but he's not like a sniper on the wing. Boozer, capable, but not a sniper. So this team is going to have a little bit less three-point volume than last year's Duke team. But man, Blake, they've got Ngongba and Maliq Brown, who was there banged up last year, but from Syracuse. They've got Darren Harris and Nicholas Kamenia off the bench. A little bit deeper here than the Razorbacks for the Blue Devils, Blake.
Yeah, Duke currently still the third best odds to win the national championship per FanDuel. Yeah, Purdue still at 1, Houston 2, Duke is at 3. By the way, Kentucky.
What are
and
Duke's
Florida,
odds on FanDuel?
Plus 1,100. By the way, Kentucky and Florida have the same odds now. Has it been that way? I don't remember that.
I don't think so.
So yeah, so that's worth noting. Arkansas plus 3,000 on that too. So yeah, so I mean, no surprise, right? Duke's one of the favorites to win the national championship. You mentioned all the reasons why in terms of the expectations for this roster. And I think too, this is a pretty big moment for the standout freshman for Arkansas. Whether it's Acuff or Thomas, and I think this is the kind of game where, when you bring guys like this in, it's all about, hey, it's these kind of games, right? It's the big moments. It's thriving in those. And yes, this is kind of an early season game, but so Arkansas doesn't have their schedule listed. Duke does have their schedule listed, by the way. I don't know why I forgot this, but I forgot that Duke opens against Texas to start the season. That's November 4th. They play Army November the 11th. They play Kansas at MSG on November 18th. Niagara November 21. Howard November 23. And then, of course, Arkansas on November 27th. And then they go straight from that to play Florida the following Tuesday. So Duke will, have some games where they're going to be tested. I think Kansas and Texas will be pretty noteworthy games before they get to Arkansas. Do we have any other sort of guide for what Arkansas's games are before that? I just don't remember. But Arkansas fans, you can let us know if so. I just juggling 16 different schedules here. So, but
yeah, I looked into it, and there's no official schedule out yet for Arkansas, but they do have a fairly loaded quad one. There's multiple top games that come after this. I am almost positive that this game for Arkansas is either their first or their second big-time test, because they do have a lot of teams loaded up, and they all come after this one. I remember that.
Okay, well, that does kind of tie into, I think, the thought of a big-time moment for these freshmen. And I think think about like John Calipari's best freshmen over the years, right? Think about the ones who just, this is the reason they went to Kentucky at the time, right? Was because they wanted to play in these kind of games. These were the big games. And then you'd have guys who just came in and you're like, all right, that dude's a freshman, but he just went out and scored 24 and whatever. And like, just, he was ready for the moment. And I think you look at obviously these two specifically and feel like, all right, they're kind of built for this. But I also think that's where having the Brazil and the Ewans, and Pringle, like all those guys who have that experience, I think is going to be really valuable. But specifically looking at that backcourt, to me, is kind of a fun thing to think about, just because this may be kind of that first huge big stage type moment for these star freshmen.
Yeah, and we had some folks asking about the total and the spreads. Right now, the total on Torvik is 147. We previewed some Cats games, Florida games. Those were up at like 160. This is going to be a little bit more defensive. You got some absolute just great defenders, versatility wise. Karter Knox can guard multiple positions. Brazil can guard multiple positions. Maliq Brown, coming off the bench for Duke, is one of the best defensive bigs in the nation in terms of his hands, steals, and blocks. I think this game, Blake, would be more of like a first to 70. Who gets to 70 first? Maybe the final is, like a high 70 to a high 60s type of game. And it's one with the physicality, rebounding, and rim protection. This will be a really good, physical test early for Arkansas because of guys like, Karter Knox, how physical he is, and Billy Richmond and Acuff in his frame. They're going to be able to use that to their advantage in the early mid-major games. And then they're going to match up with this Duke team who's going to be pretty big again. They're not going to quite be, 6'7" across the board, 6'6" across the board, but they're still big. But, they're still big. It'll be a nice physicality test.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to actually, is the kind of the size of Arkansas too and their guards. Obviously, I know Acuff 6'2", Wagner 6'4", Thomas 6'5", Billy Richmond 6'6", Knox is 6'6", and then of course you got the 6'10" trio in the front court. So I think that's where like having that size is good for a game like this, because Duke's not going to be as big, just because it's a little bit different with this team, but still, I mean, look, right, they're still playing potentially 6'5", 6'6".
They're still going to be big.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much every position you've got that NBA type size. Feeling pretty good about that, and of course the talent speaks for itself. So yeah, I mean, listen, I think this is one. By the way, I just saw the schedule. I found it here for Arkansas. So this from June 19th from Hog Sports, so 24/7. It looks like Central Arkansas on November the 11th. You've got the other two games as part of this CBS Sports thing that I don't know if they've announced the opponents for, but both those games will be in Fayetteville. They're not going to be to the level of Duke. But then, of course, you've got the game against Louisville December the 3rd, Houston on December the 20th, and then I think I'm seeing at Michigan State and Baylor as well. So,
it picks up quick, I remember.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a tough schedule there. And then, of course, we've talked about their SEC slate, where you get a couple pretty good teams twice. So yeah, so that was the point on the schedule.
Chris asks what type of pace we think this game is going to be, and honestly, I'm not exactly sure what to expect from the Duke offense, because the Duke offense last year, when you're looking at their point distribution and where they rank points from threes, points from twos, and then points from free throws, their points from twos were outside the top 300. Their points from free throws was around 225, and then points from threes was 65. I mean, they got a large portion of their points from that three-point line. And I don't think this roster is quite built that way. I think they're going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more downhill. But also, you have Isaiah Evans, Blake, who could genuinely go for like a Josh Hubbard type of night. Any night he touches the ball could go off. But I don't think Duke is going to be as run and gun. I really don't.
Well, by the way, I know you guys are mentioning no Baylor game now. Yeah, I'm just looking at something from June. So whatever's changed on that, yeah, I guess that's changed. Texas Tech, we forgot about that too. That's not listed on the ones we have here. But I think with Cal, something of note too, like there was a time there in terms of like the style of play where it was kind of predictable in terms of what they were going to do offensively. But if you look at the tempo of the past couple of years, I mean, they've been in the top 70. Of course, they were 12 in the last year at Kentucky. They were in the 69th last year at Arkansas. And I think just with the guards that they're going to have, I mean, wouldn't you think with them? Like, let's try to put this in a certain way. I think it's better for Arkansas to play in transition in the open floor than try to run offensive sets. Because I think, as we said, there have been questions regarding that with Cal in the half court offensively, I think, at times. So I would believe that given this group you have, especially with all these guys that can handle the ball, whether it's Acuff, Thomas, Wagner, Knox, Richmond, if you have the opportunity for those two guys to get out and go, and then you got the 2 or 3, 6, 10, 6, 11 guys running the court, I would think that's your best chance if you're Arkansas.
Blake, as I'm looking at Scheyer's history here, his 3 years at Duke, where he's ranked in adjusted tempo nationally, going back from 23, 24, 25, 298, 253, 269. They really have not been a fast team. I guess
Very
just in my
methodical.
head, all of the, how clean that offense was, the number one offense in the history of Ken Pom last year. I just, you got the feeling that it was fast, but they really do not play a fast style under Scheyer.
Well, it can be a double-edged sword because it's like you can say you want to play fast, but if you play fast and don't get the shots you want, then what's the point? And I think
Right.
that's where, like with Scheyer and Duke, sure he had all the talent. They probably could have got out and just ran the floor and been fine. But they came down, they got the shots they wanted to get, and that's why they were so effective on offense. They didn't feel pressured or being, forcing things
Right.
every single time. And I think that's where, like, we talk about with Arkansas, the good and the bad last year, right? You could watch the way the offense flowed and you could just see the obvious weaknesses with some of the things that they couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
last year. But then once you got later in the season, you started to see some things open up a little bit more. And so I'm excited about the potential for this team offensively. Um, and so I just feel like, I mean, I know Alan was like, which team has the best ball handlers? I think both of them have good ball handlers, but I think Arkansas just has
Yeah.
so many options in terms of having several different guys who feel like they could bring the ball up the court. And not to say Duke couldn't do that, but I like this backcourt slash wing mix for Arkansas a lot. I like it.
I think the one thing, if you want to put an X factor on it, I think the one thing Duke has that Arkansas doesn't is they do have an Isaiah Evans, a guy that, given the space, given the comfortability, if he gets into his flow, could genuinely shoot like a 7 for 11 from 3,
Mm-hmm.
and no one would bat an eye. I don't think Arkansas has a guy like that, but it's different team builds, and that's gonna have to be a major piece for whether that's a Billy Richmond assignment, coming off the bench and just right in his shorts defensively. That's going to have to be a focus for Arkansas defensively, but Arkansas has things that they can present that Duke doesn't with the depth in the backcourt and stuff. So it'll be interesting.
Last thing, you probably don't have this pulled up, but when you did the shooting rankings, did you do
Yeah,
every team or did you just do the top 5 teams?
I have the SEC, the full SEC.
Where did Arkansas wind up in terms of like returning production?
They are projected to be one of the worst shooting teams in the league, because when you look at who is coming back and that has threes, DJ Wagner, Karter Knox, and Trevon Brazile are the only players on this team that have made double-digit threes last year. DJ Wagner made 41 and he shot 30%. Karter Knox made 35 and he shot 35%, and then Brazile made 24, shooting 36%. So that is the one drawback offensively for this Arkansas team. They do not have anyone that has made over 53s in a season and had that knockdown like an Isaiah Evans. They don't have that.
That's why I think it's important that they be very free flowing in terms of getting out in
Yes.
transition, and that's where rebounding is going to factor into. So, yeah, I love this matchup. I know it's so far away, but I'm like, there are so many things that I can look at and be like, yeah, I like Duke there, but yeah, I like Arkansas there, and who knows? We'll find out where they're going to be.
That's why
But
the
yeah, I
more
mean,
we
look,
talk about Arkansas, the more I say Trevon Brazile's got to be great.
yeah. Well, look, and we know too that so Max's rankings, by the way, just remember it's factoring in returning production, so it's not
Yeah.
necessarily tying into the new guys. We know these guys can shoot that are coming in, but I think it is also fair to look at and say, as a whole, will they compare it to some of the other SEC teams? I think it remains to be seen, even as good as the freshmen are in terms of expecting them to, to be big contributors in terms of the 3-point shooting.
Yep.
All right. There you go. A way too early look at Arkansas and Duke. As we said, we're doing one of these every single week leading up to the start of the season. We'll never run out of games. There will always be a game.
It's making me more excited for the non-conference, because I'm like, oh, now I've been excited for this game for a while.
All right, guys, on the way out, we want to remind you again about our friends over at FanDuel. As we said, we don't have the line on this game yet, but Max kind of gave you a little idea of maybe what we could expect for these two. And yeah, be sure to support our friends at FanDuel, our new title sponsor here as part of the Believe Network at Southeastern 16, doing lots of great things. Once those odds are out, it's going to be a few months, but you can jump in on them now. You can also get in on those national championship odds, but maybe a little player of the year type odds as well, Max. Little Cam Boozer, plus 1,100, got the third best odds right now. If you're an Arkansas fan, there's some Arkansas players available to you as well to bet on for the Wooden Award. Check it all out at our friends at FanDuel. So many great things happening over there, and we appreciate you guys watching, and we appreciate your support of Southeastern 16. More SEC and college basketball stuff on the way here at the channel.